Today on the Veteran Ventures podcast, we have Johnny Demaddalena. He's a serial entrepreneur who clearly just wants to help other people solve problems. Seems like every single realm he's been in, he's been a problem solver and he's been there to help people. He's straddled being in the reserves and continuing his career on the civilian side and is a great example for people who might be looking to transition into the reserves. As always, thanks for joining us. Let's dive in.
Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military.
There we go.
Out of
You guys
witness
see me and hear
protection.
me? I was hiding deep there for a second.
Special operator Johnny.
Oh, I need to get the blurs over the eyes that guys do so I can be a full fake operator.
Exactly. That'd be a hilarious Zoom filter, just eye
Oh
blurred,
gosh.
nothing else.
Yeah. It looks like I'm in like some tent somewhere in the background. Like
Yeah.
really sell it.
You have like some chains hanging in the background.
Yeah. Like a gear room. There's like
Yeah.
the boxes, the little cubbies with kit in there.
Yeah.
Make it look like I just did something cool. Didn't just go take a shit and then hang out in my office.
Well, this is Jack, by the way, my co-host.
Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, for sure. Nice to meet you. Looking forward to it.
Cool.
He's out in Hawaii
Oh
doing
man,
big
where at?
things.
We're on Oahu. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I've only ever spent time on the Big Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We like to say we don't live here, we work here just because we
Yeah.
have crazy lives. But we enjoy
Yeah.
it. We love it here.
Yeah. I haven't been. I was there once. I lived there for like 3 weeks for a company project, and then I haven't been back. But I fully utilized every minute of those 3 weeks. I went scuba diving like twice a day and ran the mountain as much as I could and tried not to spend as much money as I ended up doing. So I enjoyed it.
Easy to do here for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
We can jump into it and get rolling. This is a slightly atypical conversation because most of our guests have either transitioned out of the military already, or maybe they're looking back on the transition after 20 years in the civilian sector, or they recently have, or they're in the middle of it right now. But I would argue, Johnny, that you actually transition on a monthly basis
Yeah.
because you have to go drill and then you have to go back to the civilian world. And
Yeah.
you've had several kind of transitions like that throughout your life. So I think this will be an interesting conversation and give people some insights into what is out there, some unique paths. You've taken an unconventional approach, having never worked in any major companies and really charted your own paths. I'm interested to get into this conversation and cover your story as well.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Well, it'd be great to start off with some of your background, some context on what you do in the military would be awesome as well. But then, high level overview of where you came from and what you're up to now.
Yeah, so born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas. Joined the Army right out of high school at 18. I originally went to my recruiter and had a option 40 contract, going to go be an airborne ranger. And then something happened on the recruiting side and they pushed me to something else. And at the time I was kind of pissed off, but ultimately it all worked out and I got pushed into a reserve PSYOP position. So as a psychological operations specialist at 37 Fox, I've been doing that for the past 10 years. So my entire military career has been on the reserve side. I'm doing a little bit more than the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. I typically spend about 90 days on active duty orders throughout the year, whether that's schools or I've only done AT, I think twice in my career because I'm constantly at schools or supporting real world missions. And then on the civilian side, so I started my career in privacy focused open source voice technology. So think about like Siri or Alexa, but it doesn't spy on you. They worked at a real estate technology company. They worked for myself for a little bit and then went to a traffic engineering firm deploying AI embedded hardware and software across the United States at intersections to make intersections safer for pedestrians and cars. And then earlier this year, I started a company with a friend of mine called Wirechunk.
Awesome. That's a great overview. I'm curious, you mentioned I'm sure you're not the first one that's been on the show or that's listening to the show that's had a recruiter tell them something and then they ended up at a drastically different juncture.
Yeah, yeah.
But it sounds like it, all in all, it's been you've been able to go an interesting direction. It's worked out well,
Yeah.
all things considered. Although I'm
Yeah,
a little bit biased, definitely missed some
obviously.
fun with the option 40 route.
I'm sure. Yeah, I like to say that whatever magic of the ASVAB and like their quota system at the right time, like it was stars aligned and I hit it right. And yeah, I'm sure I missed a lot, but I don't regret it.
So was that, I mean, it sounds like you were anticipating on active duty full-time
Yeah.
military thing, and then that didn't happen. Was that kind of a significant adjustment period trying to figure out what you wanted to do for full-time employment, or how did that
Not
process work?
really. So I enlisted with my best friend Patrick. So we both had the same thing and we both got shifted at the same time. So it wasn't really a huge change. I had always had this like little entrepreneurial bug. So I just started chasing that, pretended to go to college for a little bit. It didn't work out, didn't enjoy it. So then I just started chasing business.
I feel like everybody in business, whoever, any entrepreneurial or whatever you're selling, it could be anything. I feel like you should at least think about selling it to realtors because they seem like they're not very good with
Mm,
money. And
yeah,
they're kind of, a lot of them are suckers. And I
yeah.
say that having, we are in real estate too. So, but I'm interested to hear about that. But I think I joke, but it's kind of true. Like realtors are willing to spend money to make money for sure,
Oh yeah.
almost more than any other industry that I've seen. So tell me about a little bit about like that entrepreneurial spirit, or kind of what did you first start with? And you kind of mentioned it, but how did that look when you first started out?
Yeah, so I did like a basically one semester in college, and I was going to school for entrepreneurship, which in hindsight was really dumb because I was the only person in my class that had ever started a company before. So in high school, I started a company with my friends making organic, non-GMO, whatever dog treats, and we found out that just in Missouri, that was like a $1.2 billion market or something crazy, and we were like, we're gonna take all of that. That's our business now. Obviously, that didn't work out, but like I learned so much from that going into business school, I just had a leg up on everybody, it felt like. And even the professor, as smart as he had just done the typical business school track and then became a professor. So I applied for like all the pitch competitions and had all these crazy ideas in there. And then my paper for one of the pitch competitions was then used as the example for all the other classes going forward, which is really cool. But yeah, so college didn't work out. I went to work with a friend of mine who had a foundation repair business, and his dad was going to retire. And so we were talking about we're going to take this business, and we had a bunch of ideas on, two young guys had a bunch of ideas on embedding a bunch of tech in this and making it some $1 trillion thing. And then his dad was like, actually, I'm just going to work till I'm 110. So, and we are like, all right, well, I'm going to go do something else, which is where I then went to that voice tech company. And then after that, I ended up working with a bunch of real estate agents at a real estate technology firm.
What were you doing for the real estate company?
Yeah, so it's a company called Homeroom. So it's a co-living company. So take a single family house, 5 bedrooms, and you rent out each one to young professionals, and then you provide obviously all the utilities and everything is all in one package. And then we provide these amenities for the household to be like its own little community. So I was on the operations side. I built out the sales team over there. So I think we had 30 houses in Kansas City Metro and then in Austin. And then by the time we left, or by the time I left, I think we had almost 80 or 90 houses across Kansas City, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and then I think Oklahoma City. So worked on the operations side to manage all that. But in doing so, I worked with a lot of real estate agents that
Mhm.
would source us investors for it and or sell the houses on the back end if we had an investor or homeowner that wanted to exit the program, which only happened like twice, I think.
Got it. So you guys, they weren't actually purchasing the homes. You guys were finding investors that already owned them and then partnering with them, or?
Most of them were actually investors that wanted a house, and then we would identify the perfect house that fit the criteria. So it had to be like over 4 bedrooms, a certain square footage, big living area in a certain area, and then we would quote them a price on building it out to make it fit our model perfectly. And then as soon as they bought it, we signed a master lease agreement for like 4 years or something. And then we just managed the house and they just got a check every single month.
Okay. Nice. So it's kind of like an arbitrage type of thing where
Yeah.
you were renting it out and then renting it out. Okay.
Yeah, yes, but the homeowner saw significantly higher returns than
Sure.
what they would be if it was just a single family rental, like, 80% higher in
Mhm.
some cases.
I'm curious, Johnny, we haven't had the a conversation on here yet with someone who's in the reserves, and we haven't discussed, how that is an option for people after they get out of active duty. Would love to
Mm.
hear your experience. Again, it's not a typical one, given the fact that you're not just in a standard reserve unit, but would be great to hear more details on your experience there. If you think or if you've interacted with those that have come from active duty into the reserves and who it might be a fit for looking at that option.
Yeah, those guys, the guys that do like 6 or 8 years active duty and then end their career with, 2 to 4 on the reserve side. I had a few of them when I started my career, and at my current company, we have a few. They bring so much knowledge and understanding of like bigger army that we as just career reservists don't always see all the time. Like I had one guy at the very beginning of my career came from active duty psyop. He was an 82nd guy and then came to the reserve side for the last like 4 years of his career. And he was like he memorized the Ranger handbook. He memorized like all of the psyop doctrine. So no matter what he was doing, he was just objectively the best at everything. And having somebody like that sets the standard for everybody else. So then, me as some young up and coming guy, I'm like just chasing him. I'm like, I have to be better than him at everything. And then just like their experience, like a guy coming from the 82nd into a PSYOP company, the very few of us were like former infantry guys. So, they bring a lot of experience. I had an instructor who is what are they called? The water purification, water supply specialist, whatever. They make sure your water is safe to drink. He was, whatever that job was, went to Ranger Regiment, was that, and then became a PSYOPer. So, like, that guy's career is insane. Like, that, the expertise and experience that he has had is something that we would just never see as some organic PSYOP company. Yeah, those guys bring a lot to the unit, and I think the unit can give a lot to them, especially if they are early in the transition process, because you have an entire company of guys who are Army guys, but they're also accountants and lawyers and nurses and cops and firefighters and whatever, or business guys, and they can provide some help to those guys as well.
When you mentioned the water treatment specialist guide, I couldn't help but think that could be mixed into some pretty effective psyops campaign.
Oh,
On potable
absolutely.
drinking water is
Yeah.
a very
Oh, yeah,
effective tool.
absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Right.
Well, it also, going from active to the reserves, it's a logical way to transition. It's a way to not go cold turkey from the military, from the culture, from the community that you've known for probably most of the professional career, but still having a piece of that. But some might think it's too much of a drastic step down, going from, every day to once a month and 2 weeks during the year. But it sounds like you've found ways, at least maybe your unit affords ways for you to have a lot more than that, to have kind of an intermediate step where you said 90 days plus of
Yeah.
active duty service time. Is that available for everyone? Can you talk more to, is that, I'm assuming anyone who raises their hand is able to do something like that?
Yeah, I will say as a reserve PSYOPer, it is drastically different than as a reserve PSYOP in civil affairs is drastically different than most of the reserve in that we're just afforded a lot of opportunities to go do stuff. And then a few years ago, Lieutenant General Daniels testified to Congress and said something like the Army Reserve is 20% of the Army's total force, but takes 6% of the budget and will do 20% of the deployments. Like, so if you're in there, you can be really busy. Yeah, like raising your hand really early and getting all that experience. So, you can be a qualified E5, E6 to go do your job and, get the 90 days on orders is definitely what helps. But yeah, I think a lot of it is being in the right unit. I mean, I know some guys that are just strictly the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. And then like I know some of the National Guard SF guys are like, if they really want to, they can do basically ADOS for 10 months a year
Right.
and then just take off 2 months. So yeah, it really depends on your unit and your job and kind of the position in your career that you're in. Like when I got in, I definitely could not do that. I was doing there just wasn't a whole lot for me, but now as an NCO, there's a lot more.
Yeah. Let's say an infantryman from the 82nd, just to continue with that example, decides to get off active duty. Do they need to go through PSYOPs or civil affairs selection before transitioning out? And maybe, I don't know if you know this answer to this
Yeah.
question. It's probably an ignorant one, but, or can they get into reserves and then get all the qualification to switch over to those specialty MOSs?
Yeah, so the reserve side is different than the active duty side. So as of right now, there's indication that's changing. But as of right now, you don't have to go through selection and everything. And then a lot of your training is really on your home unit to make sure that you're capable of doing your job. So they would just go through reclass. So guy getting out of the 82nd signs a 4-year reserve contract to be a 37 Fox, a PSYOPer, would show up to the unit. We would train him up. He would then go to reclass for 6, 7 weeks, I think. I don't remember how long. And then he would come back to us, and then he would go to airborne school if he wasn't already airborne qualified. If he's an NCO, he would then go to all the NCO courses. And then basically a year and a half later, he's a fully qualified, ready to rock and roll PSYOPer.
So it sounds like, I mean, it takes a little more than being in the right location, making sure there's a unit there, obviously, or being willing to travel to that unit, I assume.
Yeah.
And also, volunteering for it. I mean, I'm assuming the reserves, and it probably has a need for people going to PSYOP and civil affairs units. As long as someone just volunteers to do that and is in the right location, they could land a reserve position that's not something that they would hate. They could land some of the better reserve positions just through that,
that was going to kind of be my question was, how much of that right time, right place for you was right place? Like where you chose to, kind of enter into service, was that just, hey, there's a unit right here, we just need to fill that unit? So a lot of the, I'm sure that had to do with it. Where's the unit at?
Yeah, so definitely right time, right place, because the first unit I was at was like 30 minutes from my house. So yeah, definitely right time, right place. And then switching to the unit I'm currently at, I was recruited over there. So, but right time, right place, to be at the right place where I met the guys that were looking for guys to come down to that unit. So yeah, right time, right place all the way through.
And that might be, definitely, if you're thinking about joining the reserves afterwards, when you get out, I think geographically you have to be aware of what unit is there. And now I do know there's a guy in the Hawaii National Guard that actually, I think he lives in Texas and he commutes every single time, which does happen. So, that's what, but frankly, the average person isn't going to choose to pursue that. So the biggest question is how to find where you're going to end up after you transition from active duty service and what.
Yeah, I mean, it does matter on your location, but those guys that like I travel every month and we get what's called IDT money. So, I get $500 to travel down, which always will cover my flights as long as I book them early enough. So, yeah, and we had a guy who was, I don't know, I forget what he did on the civilian side. He was in Alaska. He would travel from Alaska down to the lower 48 to go to drill every single month. I mean, we have guy in Puerto Rico who flies from Puerto Rico to Texas every single month to go to drill. So yeah, it can definitely be done. If there's the right place and they want you and there's value for you to be there, there are ways to make it work.
And does your drill consist of airborne operations?
Yeah.
Pretty much every month?
They are scheduled for the company basically every other month. And then if you are like on the JM track, throughout the command, there's multiple jumps a month. So then you can get on those. And if you're a jump master, then you're doing, the company one, and then you're also pulling JM duties elsewhere. So our JMs are very busy.
It sounds like someone could get more jumps through that schedule than maybe a lot of active duty units.
Oh yeah.
Can you join just to be a jump master? I would do that.
Yeah,
I would just to go do more duties.
No.
Jack, did you interact with the Czech Republic or any of the foreign guys that like they have an MOS just for jump masters?
Oh,
That's
no.
Cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, the Czech Republic guys that we jumped with, they're jump masters. That's their MOS. So all they do is jump master duties. They don't have to do range. I mean, literally nothing else but push people out of birds. It's pretty awesome.
Well, that's kind of like the reserve riggers. I mean, they're riggers, and I mean all the
Yeah.
NCO, all the rigger NCOs are jump masters. So I mean they have to pull duties just like everybody else, and they travel around to go hand out shoots. So I mean, if you really wanted to just be a jump master and you'd have to get bumped down to be a rigger if you were not already one. But
Right.
do your time as an E4 rigger and make E5. If you're already a jump master, then just start pulling duties. That would be a pretty cush gig. Yeah.
Is there an airborne unit in Hawaii, Jack? I could see you just staying out there, just running the E4 rigger mafia, and then
I
Right.
just
don't
jump
think I
in your
don't
spare time.
I don't
Yeah,
think there is off the top of
I
my
think it's
head.
like I think that there's some soft like admin units out here that have to jump
Yeah.
occasionally, but I think it's rare that they get jumps.
Yeah.
That would
So
just be too cool. The army
right.
couldn't allow
There
couldn't
was
allow that.
so there was a guy that I worked with in a logistics unit as my last job, and he transferred to be like the logistics liaison for the soft unit. And he wore an airborne, like a maroon beret, but he wasn't airborne qualified. And
Yeah.
it was like, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess like it's a unit thing. So it is, it is what it is. But I just always thought that he showed up in an airborne beret or a maroon beret. I was like, what is that? What are you wearing?
Yeah.
He's just the pogue of all pogues. And
Oh yeah.
no,
Oh
normally I'm
yeah.
not that way, but it was just, he was like super overweight and it was like,
Jack
Oh
only
yeah.
smacked the beret off his head once or twice. Never publicly.
yeah, just in my,
You envisioned it.
I dreamed of it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can visualize the type, and I've seen them walking around a few too many
Right.
times. Yeah.
But it's just so funny because like it wasn't like at the 82nd or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like this tiny little soft like unit that it was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
administrative, and he just wears maroon beret to the PX and everything.
I live right outside of Fort Leavenworth, and occasionally I have to go up there and do stuff. And as a good paratrooper, I got rid of my PC, and so I stick out like a sore thumb walking around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You're
But
like, what is that thing on your head?
Yeah.
right. Well,
Yeah.
especially nowadays because they've gone away from the beret pretty much everywhere. So, it probably wasn't as abnormal, a decade and a half ago, but now it's very,
Yeah.
like, people see it, you stick out like a
Yeah.
sore thumb.
I mean, now you can wear a boonie cap. I mean, in some commands, you can do whatever you want.
Dude, so the Hawaii, the units here, it's just a different culture. And
Yeah.
it's just culturally like the units here compared to when we were in the 173rd to coming here, like the level of the standards, like it's all like jungle, like, oh, we don't shave,
Yeah.
we don't, we wear the boonie cap, we roll our sleeves up. It's very odd compared to what Griffin and I grew up with
Yeah.
in the 173rd. And I'm sure it just, it's interesting, but it's just the whole culture. Every unit on the island is that way. You see them driving vehicles without, the proper PPE. It's just kind of
Yeah.
just different.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I've worked with the Puerto Rican National Guard a few times. That is like a totally different culture because they all speak English and Spanish at the same time, and their equipment sometimes is not up to the standards that we would like to see. The way they do things is just totally different. There's a language barrier sometimes. Yeah, like that is a totally different like army culture.
What are you doing? What are you doing now? Can we transition? Like, what are your current focuses, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I started a company called Wirechunk. So Wirechunk is a website platform for growing businesses that makes their web presence easy. So we're the content management system, site builder, and custom toolkit. So typically a growing business at some point will need to spend $10,000 to build out their website and their web features. And then they're going to need to spend $400 a month on hosting, plugins, tools, maintenance if they have somebody on retainer to do that. We do all that for less than $50 a month. And then in addition to that, we provide these agentic tools that automate traditionally expensive manual labor operations. So the first one we're doing is programmatic SEO. So we'll automatically generate web pages with specific keywords to ensure the small businesses will rank higher in search engines. So that is my full-time job.
I'm super interested in that as a business owner. We're obviously SEO is like, how do we crack
Yeah.
that nut? What do you guys do? I guess my biggest question isn't, it's not like by any means putting you on the spot, but
Mhm.
how do you avoid over promising and under delivering in that market? Because I think that's like the number one thing, right? Like,
Yeah. So it's kind of similar. We work with a lot of insurance agents. And so insurance agents are a very local business. They're not trying to, an insurance agent in Kansas City is not trying to capture a bunch of business in Atlanta or Portland, Oregon. So just being very focused on, we are just going to help you in your local community for SEO specifically is really the key there. And then, building our software and our platform to be easily accessible to them so that they don't need us. They don't need to be calling us all the time, and they don't need to be hiring some outside agency or some consultant to be working for them, because that's where that $400 a month comes from for growing businesses. Is they have somebody on retainer for $200 a month, and they're just paying $200 a month just in case something breaks and they got to call them. I mean, we talked to one agency and they were charging like $600 a month just to be available if anything happened. For a growing business, whether it's some home service businesses that we work with or insurance agents or a SaaS company, any amount of money at the very early stages when you're a growing business that you can save really matters.
So just to put it in layman's terms, like let's say, and correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody's starting a business, they want to build their website, get traction on Google and other web searches, and then have all the hosting, and without having any technical expertise, they can essentially bring you guys on. Instead of paying 10 grand plus and then a hefty retainer after that, they could bring you guys on, get all that built with, it's essentially a no code tool that they could use to get everything up and running for a new business or new, web presence.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. I like to say for like a second time founder or entrepreneur, you kind of already know what you need. So you're like, all right, well, I have this business. I'm going to go get my WordPress. I'm going to go get Elementor to go build it. I'm going to go get my 10 different plugins to do it. And then, oh, well, I broke something. So I'm going to go hire somebody on Fiverr to go fix all this stuff. And then now you're on the whole like $4,000. You could just come to Wirechunk and just pay $50 a month. We have natural language prompting. So you can say exactly what you want. Your website gets built. Everything is hosted for you, so it's very easy. And then we allow you to do those custom things that you want to do later on down the road. So like that SaaS, our largest customer is a SaaS company. They have like 15 now custom tools that they built on top of Wirechunk, in addition to their core offering that they did. So yeah, I want to be there for the company that is at the ideation phase and they need something super simple that they would typically go to like Wix for, but they're smart enough to understand, I'm not going to build an empire on Wix. I'm not going to build, a business I'm going to hand down to my kids on Wix. I'm going to do something once and I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to do it so I don't have to be fixing something all the time. And I don't have this giant overhead of my technical stack in front of me every day.
It's probably the typical question you get, but I'm curious, for someone who knows a little bit about building something but doesn't have the technical expertise, how do you differ? How does Wirechunk differ from Bubble, V0, Replit, some of the other no-code tools that are out there to build with?
Yeah. So with like Replit and V0 specifically, they're very good on the front end and making that work. But as soon as you say, I now have this custom database this table that's getting updated all the time, and I have this backend thing, and I have this particular plugin that it has to work with because my business is really reliant on this one thing, you start to have a lot of issues. Even if you, like on V0, I'll play around with it like once a week and I'll try and get something relatively simple. And it's always like a directory failed or, there's some connection that it just doesn't have. Our system is fundamentally built different because as opposed to like the typical WordPress setup where you have this content delivery system or content management system in the center and you're building all this other stuff around it and then trying to plug everything together. We built everything from the ground up. So all of that just naturally can talk to each other and then with granular controls for security in there. So it's a fundamental architecture difference as opposed to Bubble or V0 or Replit or something. Not to say that Replit and V0 aren't great for doing one particular thing. If you want to mock something up really quick, I just go over to one of those and do it. But if you want that to be deployed and managed and build on top of it for the future, you definitely want to use Wirechunk.
Well, I haven't messed around with Replit or some of the other tools as much as I'd like to, but the biggest complaint from what I understand is the last mile. People can
Yeah.
get to a 90% solution, but that last 10% is like impossible. You have to go hire someone to do it anyways. And at that
Yeah.
point, you're paying the same as if you had gone through a standard like website build.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that the support that Wirechunk, the team at Wirechunk provides kind of prevents that last mile frustration. Is that correct?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Nice.
Is there like a menu of options, or is it really driven by the consumer on what they want and you guys just take it and run with it?
Yeah. Really driven by the consumer. So what an insurance agent who onboards with us sees is different than a home cleaning business that onboards with us or any other home service business. They're going to see different things because what that home service business needs is different than the insurance agent. The insurance agents need a landing page that's really good. They have events and promotions, so they need to spin up landing pages very quickly for a myriad of different things. So some of them will end up having like 30 different landing pages, and then they need the content below that with the SEO. Whereas a home cleaning business needs like 2 or 3 pages, and then but they have a deeper technical need for user management. So they need their customers to be able to log in and see their last cleaning and their next cleaning and their billing and all that stuff. And where you would typically build that, you now need 5 different plugins. You're all paying a fee to every single month, a license to do that. And you got to integrate all of it. As with Wirechunk, it's all just there for you. So you can be a home cleaning business with that is just an idea, and you can build into managing users and emailing promo codes and whatever else you need to do.
Where's the line? What sort of business is too small or too nascent to have to start with Wirechunk? Like, is there a line there where the company's like, look, I just have a concept that I'm running with a couple of my friends. Maybe it's not going to turn into a
Yeah.
test. Is that kind of below the mark where you would recommend Wirechunk, or is there not a mark there?
Yeah, I would say if you are just at the idea phase and you just need a website that is just to collect some inbound to collect emails or something, Wirechunk's probably not the best for you. But if you have any ideas beyond that to start building stuff, or you want to display that and then build all the backend stuff, then Wirechunk is definitely for you.
Yeah. And if somebody were to use one of those basic tools to build like something to collect inbound, would it be pretty simple and then it grew legs, let's say. Would
Yeah.
it be pretty simple to take all that and import it into Wirechunk and then, or I'm assuming you have to start from
Depends.
zero, but you at least have like
Yeah,
something to look at.
it depends. So like if you have an idea with your friends and set up some page to collect emails and post a few blogs or something, we can copy that over pretty easily, or you can do it. Once you get like any bit further than that, then it's like an actual lift that is required. And typically that's the point when people start thinking about their technology stack and they start thinking about, okay, well, I'm collecting these emails. I'm going to sell all these people some stuff in the future. Like, how am I going to go about doing that? Like, well, I got my active campaigns here. I got my Shopify. Like, you start thinking about all that stuff. That's the point when you should start thinking about moving yourself over to Wirechunk so that you don't have to re-platform again, which is the biggest expense that growing businesses see with their technology stack.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's our problem right now is just 10 different
Yeah.
things that we're using to, we're bringing in warm leads from Zillow or from all the many options through our property management. And then they go into Follow Up Boss, and then we have a Zap that pushes them over to another.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just a lot. And we built this thing out, but it's a lot of time for us to manage ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's, I think you're absolutely correct in that the company shouldn't be focused on that. If you can offload that and simplify it is better, as long as it, leads to the end goal. Do you do anything on like the sales side or like generating leads, or like, I guess I'm asking, like, are you also kind of like an advertising agency where you're physically doing stuff for SEO and generating leads, or is it more
No.
just the background
Yeah,
stuff?
we don't do any of that. So the SEO, the programmatic SEO product is the first of our agentic tools that we're offering. So we're the platform and the infrastructure. And then because we're the platform and the infrastructure, and we can see all of our customers and what they're doing and what they need, we can then go and build a product that all of them would use, which is how we got the idea for the programmatic SEO, because we work with insurance agents and home cleaning businesses or home service businesses in general. And both of those, because they're hyper local, they're competing, and they're competing for leads. As same with real estate, they're competing for leads. The existing services out there to do SEO for them is like two, three, $4,000 a month, and that's something that they have to pay for like 6 months to even start ranking and start doing really well. So we just built a product that we can offer to everybody who's already on Wirechunk to do that. But no, we're not an agency. There is some agency work that maybe will come to us that we refer out to other people. We're a technology company. We provide the platform, the infrastructure.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that also helps you, kind of what I've said before, is like, under promise and over deliver, as opposed to the opposite. Like if
Yeah.
because I feel like a lot of these companies just promise 10,000 leads and you're going to, it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't generally happen the way they promise, but that sounds great. It's awesome. I think it's definitely a need. And I think, yeah, I'm excited to, I actually maybe schedule a call after this
Yeah. Let's
to
do
chat
it.
about where we could maybe find some common work together. So
Yeah. Let's do it.
Johnny, it's interesting. It seems like in about a decade, maybe even less, you've had a handful of very different experiences. And I'm curious, maybe thinking about it through the lens of someone who's going through a transition themselves or leaving active duty, looking at getting into what's next. How do you think about deciding on what's next? And how would you recommend someone with a military background think about choosing their next step or choosing the next chapter?
As tough. I always tell people to lean on as many of the resources that they have. And that's not just like all the transition services and, veteran networks and all that stuff, but everybody that's around you. Like I think about my reserve company. I have everybody is obviously a soldier and highly competent and a paratrooper, but I also have nurses. We had a PA, we have lawyers, like we have accountants, we have firefighters, like all of those people have different experiences. So if you're getting out of the Army and you have 15 different ideas on what you want to do, I guarantee there's somebody that has gone before you that has had those same thoughts and has had those same 15 things in front of them. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many people out there that have kind of been through the same path. And it's that network effect that you start building is like, hey, I'm getting out. All right, I'm gonna call Griffin, see what he did. And he's got like 100 friends, and maybe he doesn't have exactly what I want, but he has a friend that knows exactly what I want. You start doing that, you really get to what you need. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Yeah, as many kind of informative interviews as
Yeah.
you can manage or you can drum up with helpful people that might be able to inform that decision. It seems like you also are very effective at trial and error. Like you iterate
Yeah.
well, like you give things a shot, and maybe a lot of it is just giving things a try to see if it fits your personality, see if it fits your strengths. So do you have any ways that you think about or frame how long you work at something before pivoting, or how much you try and push through difficulties of learning something new or new industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. You guys can't see it, but on my desk, I have like 5 other projects that are kind of like literally on the edge of my desk because they're the back burner that I
You strike
have.
me as a multitasker, so I
Yeah,
think you'd be a
yeah.
good one to ask.
Yeah, I think it's time boxing stuff. I'm sure I've had some really good ideas at one point that I only worked on for a week or 2 weeks or something. And I time box it because at the end of those 2 weeks and 15 different phone calls with people asking about if my idea was stupid and a bunch of research, I realized it probably wasn't a good idea, or it was a good idea, but the upfront expense and investment in time and money and energy was just something at the time I wasn't ready for. I think time boxing everything is really beneficial. I think we learn a lot of that in the Army is like your briefing or your paper is not going to be the best. Your report is not going to be the best. And if you try and make it the best, you're just going to go on forever. So just time box it to an hour and get this shit done and move on to the next thing. So yeah, time boxing a lot. I'm looking at the projects that I have and just thinking about all the time that was in all these, but each one of those I learned something new. Like I learned how to deal with this certain technology that I then took to this other thing. Or, I met this one person who, later on I was able to go ask for advice on something or who became a customer, something like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely stacking skills and connections that make the
Yeah.
next endeavor that much more successful. Do you time block? Do you have like a default number of years, months days even that you give something a shot, or is it a different
Years.
kind of, yeah.
I'm
Did
thinking
you,
hours sometimes. I don't know, like being a reserve psyoper and seeing the and working on the conventional and soft side, and then also being this like technology guy working on all this stuff, I constantly see places where I can take this stuff and solve army problems. So like I have a bunch of those projects that, I've pitched to people and, wrote white papers for and stuff. Like those are probably about a month of like back burner work, an hour every day working on it. So yeah, I don't know, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, somewhere around there is the threshold to define if something should be serious or not.
yeah, let it stew for a while, have those conversations, think
Yeah.
about it, actually work on it for a couple weeks and see if it's worth diving
Yeah.
into. That makes sense. Are you able to, not to put you on the spot here, but are you able to share one of those ideas that's either on the back burner now that you tried that you think was or could be particularly interesting?
No, not really. I mean, a lot of it is just think about like just all of the little stuff that we have to do in the army 1,000 times over that can just be automated away with some really simple I'll give you a really good example. Doing arms room inventory. You
Jack's
we
favorite job.
we have 110 rifles. Just I have to go count them, but I have to count them by serial number and make sure that they're all there. There's a QR code on there. QR codes are open standard. I can just go get a scanner and scan all of them, and it automatically imports into an Excel file. But I can't do that because there is a particular piece of hardware that some contractor sells to the government that allows them to do that. That's inside of some secure system that I can't just go build. Like I built that system and was going to go deploy it, and then the arms room guy was like, "Get out of here! Do not bring that shit in my arms room." Like just little stuff like that. There's a lot of applications for technology and ideas that I've had more so on like the PSYOP and Intel side.
Right.
Change of command inventories would be so much nicer if there was just some
I
common
I,
sense
ha-
applied.
I have a friend that is working on something like that right now because he was a loggy, so he understood that tracking all this stuff and change of command inventories is the biggest nightmare, and managing flipples and all that officer stuff that I don't know about is
I
a
was about to
big part
say
of the job.
all of the trauma caused by flipples over the years would just 90% evaporate immediately
Yeah.
with that tech.
I
Oh
actually
yeah.
just like about all of my change of command inventory binders that I kept because they say to like keep them for a long time.
You burned
I
them?
I actually just got rid of them because
Hell yeah.
it's been like it's been long enough at least. So
They're now floating in the Pacific.
right, it's been like six
Crazy.
years now since I changed commands. I'm like, if they reach out at this point, now that I'm out of the arm, I was
That's
like,
their problem.
right,
Yeah, that's their
exactly.
problem. Yeah. I remember one we were missing something and it was like a pretty sensitive thing, and we pulled everything out of all of our cages. Everything, and laid all of it out. This is like on an AT, so they had plenty of time with us and just laid everything out and looked through all of it. And I was like, this is the dumbest shit in the world. Now, I think it was found like somewhere sitting in the office that somebody
I was gonna say
grabbed
that
to show somebody. It was the
that never
dumbest shit
works.
ever.
It's never in any of those places that you pull
I
everything out
know.
of.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
never happened before. It's always in some obvious place that you just didn't think to look.
Yeah.
Or it fell out of the back of a truck.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're never gonna find it.
Griffin, do you get that reference? I hope you
Unfortunately, I do. That the trauma is still fresh here years
Yeah.
later. We did find it, thankfully. Yeah,
What'd you lose?
bouncy truck ride lost some sensitive items that were found, thankfully.
Oh. As long as you don't find them showing up on Facebook Marketplace, you're good.
Right.
Well, this one was so old and so antiquated, nobody would have even wanted to put it on Facebook Marketplace. It was being turned in, like out completely. I mean, it was about to be trashed, but instead of going into the dumpster, to the fire, wherever they put this thing, it then bounced out of a Humvee and was all hands on deck searching for this thing as we were all locked down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was not even our supply sergeant that did it. It was the adjacent company's supply sergeant that put it back there. And we did that for Griffin, it was like 24 hours, right? I mean, it was
Yeah, I think we had gone into, we were like at 36 out. We were into day two.
because another unit had found it, but it took so long to get up the chain
Oh
and back down
no.
to us that it went, and it was a different brigade. So it literally went all the way up to the brigades
Oh,
and back down. So that was a fun
I,
day
and I,
as a commander.
And I think, Jack, the way that we found it, I've sent a lot of emails to large distribution lists before, but I think I sent an email to the largest distribution list to try and find, it was like the distribution list for all US units in Germany,
Right.
basically.
Like if you're a lieutenant,
Yeah.
Yeah.
be on the
Man.
lookout.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Jack. Bring some fresh scar
Yeah,
tissue to the
some,
surface.
some trauma.
Well, Johnny, I'm curious, and we start to wrap up here, but I want to cover, or at least ask about your investing company. Is that still active? What do things look like on that side of things? I find
Yeah.
that super fascinating.
Yeah, we're not an asset manager anymore. I mainly use that now because I'm an advisor to a couple companies, early stage companies. So just all the proceeds from my stocks and options and any compensation just goes over there. But yeah, I built a dual risk rating credit model for Bitcoin credit facilities. So if I would basically tell people if a credit facility based on Bitcoin or involving Bitcoin was a good buy or not. Yeah, so I built that. I tried to raise money for a hedge fund for it. Didn't really work out, but I built this really cool model that I then took and did some consulting for Bitcoin ATM miners, some OTC desks, Bitcoin ATM providers, wealthy individuals. So yeah, I mean, all in all, great experience and still doing a little bit of it today.
Interesting. Has your outlook on Bitcoin changed at all over the
Never,
last several years?
never, never. I did a podcast like five years ago, and I said I only own two things, Bitcoin and my house, and that's still true.
Wow. A purist, man. That's awesome.
Paris. Yes. Yeah.
Which one's appreciated more?
Depending on the day, it goes back and forth. At one point, one was very much in the green and one was very much in the red.
Use your imagination,
Yeah,
listeners.
use your imagination. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Johnny, as we wrap up here, there's a two-part question we ask every guest. One is, the first part is one ask. What's one way somebody listening to this could help you or provide value to you?
Yeah, anybody that is a small business that is growing that has technical needs, most of the time those technical needs are going to be on the web. I can help you solve that with Wirechunk.
Awesome.
Nice.
And it sounds like, yeah, you could solve quite a few problems for a lot of people.
That's
I
the
imagine
goal.
very common pain point. And then second part of that, one give. You've given a lot of interesting advice and experience already, but anything else you would offer to somebody listening to this that's maybe going through a transition or figuring out what they want to do in the civilian world?
If you haven't considered going the Guard and Reserve route just for a couple of years, even if you just get to hang on to being a soldier for a little bit longer and that's your kind of gray zone to transition out, definitely worth it. If you find out that being the civilian world is not really for you for whatever reason, and you have a good reserve or guard company, they might be able to put you on ADOS orders and you can go be a soldier again, do some other stuff. You're also going to meet some of the smartest, most capable, dedicated people you'll ever meet in guard and reserve companies. So that would be my advice.
And as you heard, you could keep jumping. You could
If you want to keep jumping, give me a call.
you could be a rigger that has a sweet job, maybe not in Hawaii, but elsewhere.
You could be a rigger in Texas where it's hot as shit all the time, driving a box truck. Yeah.
Dream job, baby.
Yeah, dream job.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation, Johnny. Thanks for joining us for this. And I'll pass it to you for any parting thoughts, last wisdom for anyone out there in the audience.
I don't have anything else. If you want to build a cool website or business, hit me up. If you want to talk about Army stuff or jumping in the reserve, hit me up. I'm pretty easy to get in touch with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, time is money, right? So thank you for putting the time towards this. I mean, we do it just to try to give back to people who are transitioning out in any unique scenario. Like you got a unique story. We love it. And we want to showcase that and kind of show people that those happen. So appreciate that.
Appreciate the time, guys. I have office hours for vets on my Calendly every Friday. So open to anybody.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome. What is that? Are those just any questions about what you're building or how to help people?
Anything, guys that are still in, transitioning out, guard, reserve guys, whoever it is, have office hours available. So
that's really cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for doing that, for offering that service to people, and keep up the great work, man. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people interested in what you're doing and get some help for all the issues they face on a daily basis, I'm sure.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures Podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures Podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.